Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted. I appreciate that. I like comments too, so leave a comment if you'd like. It's been a while, so I thought it might be a good time to do another video on how to make some interesting bales. One of the ways to really dress up a piece is to even if you have a pretty stone, if you just do a basic bale on all of them, they all kind of start to look the same. So you can really kind of turn a piece that's attractive into something that's kind of artistic. So here's some different ways to do it. I've picked 5 different ones. There's infinite possibilities, so I'll keep making these videos if you keep enjoying them. So that's what we'll do today. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons are awesome, and I really appreciate their support, both financial as well as the great friendly atmosphere that they've created over on my Patreon. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you guys so much. Secondly, I'd like to thank my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 10,500, which is amazing. You guys rock, and I really appreciate all of your support as well. It helps with the moral support when you leave those nice comments, so I appreciate that. And the financial contributions like buying me a coffee or super thanks, those things really help with the materials as the price of silver is going up. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. With those things being said, let's get started on these bales. Here's a couple of the styles of my design idea books that you can get on my merch store if you're interested. There's 4 or 5 other designs that you can pick from, including one that says pickle time, if you like that part of my videos. I find these really useful as far as coming up with sketches for what I'm going to make. I didn't used to do that when I first started, but my outcomes have become much better when I started kind of planning in advance a little more. So I think it's worthwhile. So let's look at some of the ideas I came up with here. So one, I occasionally use these macaroni-shaped silver tubes. They're big enough for a nice cable chain to go through, and I'm going to modify one so it has just a loop that hangs straight down, probably made out of some flattened 12-gauge square wire that I have laying around here, and that'll be a relatively easy one to make. Second, we'll use a homemade tube that I make out of some 26-gauge silver sheet. I have one actually that I found laying around that I made for something else, and we'll use that, and we'll put some 14-gauge square wire as kind of a double loop facing that way. So there'd be 2 loops there, so you could have 2 loops on your bale to kind of give it kind of a forward-backward swing, which I think will be nice. Third, I've done this once before. I came up with this one when I was making a different one that had kind of a Marquise shape over and over again in the piece, so I made a Marquise shaped bale, and that's what this is going to be. Well, this is a side view, so it'll be basically 2 pieces of 22 gauge soldered at the ends, and then with a spacer in between. The chain will go through the top part, a loop that hooks to your pendant goes through the bottom part. Fourth is a variation of this, and I'm just going to make 2 little filigree pieces. Actually, I did in advance so that we can just solder them together, and I can show you that step. And then finally, I was going to do a hinge bale, but I think I'll save that for another time. I'm going to do one with a stone. I pre-made a bezel for a little amethyst. So there's a bezel for an amethyst, and we'll add some little kind of bow tie shapes to that allow for a chain to go through the top, and some kind of loop, probably angular loop, that hooks onto your pendant. So I think that'll be kind of an attractive one. We'll see. I've never made one quite like that, so we'll give that a try. We're going to start with this tube here, and we're going to add a strap to it. So there's the tube. You can get these from different jewelry supply places like Rio and stuff. Here's a piece of 12 gauge that I flattened not too long ago. When I'm doing 5 projects like this, I sometimes do some pre-making of parts, and then we'll just kind of assemble them. So for this one, I got this right here, and I want to wrap it all the way around the tube. So I think first of all, I'm going to flatten the end here with a file. So we'll do that first. And then I think I'm just going to use my bale making pliers. I'm going to kind of see which one is close. I'm going to go with one that's smaller because it's going to spring back a little bit when I wrap it around there. And then I want it to be tight around here, so I want it to be, I have to force it on there kind of. So let's do it around that one. If you don't have a bail making pliers, these are super handy. I might use my round nose pliers to make this bottom part curve in just a little bit more, if I can. Pretty close here. I might need to open it up just a little bit. I think of these little tube beads as kind of like macaronis. There we go. Now I want to try and bring this closer to the end of that. If I can, let's see if I can do that without damaging the tube. I hope so, because I've only got one tube left here, so. That'll work, I think. You could use this one as like an interchangeable bail, maybe. If we leave this little loop so it's got a closure that just kind of pinches shut, you could snap it onto different pendants if you wanted to. So you could have one bail for multiple pendants if you wanted to just change out the stone. I think that'd be kind of a fun idea. If you've never seen my videos before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder. And I use a liquid flux called My-T-Flux that I spray on. Hardest part for me on this is getting it centered, probably. That's pretty good, I think. So I also do something called pick soldering a lot, which if you're interested in learning how to do that, I'll put a link to a video right up there. It's a really useful skill. I think it's really moved me forward as a silversmith. So it allows you to pick up a piece of solder like this and touch it to something once you get it up to soldering temperature, and it just jumps on there. And it makes it real easy to place solder. So I have a few pieces of my sheet solder over here. The other question people ask a lot is, what torch do I use? And I use a Silversmith model, which is their air acetylene torch. So it doesn't have an oxygen tank, it's just air and acetylene. And it's plenty hot for what we're doing here. In fact, it's probably the best torch I've ever used. So I'm going to go ahead and get this fluxed and solder it together. So I'm going to do a little pick soldering here. Like I said, let's pick up a little small piece here. The trick to doing it really is just don't stick the solder in until you think you have both pieces you're trying to solder together up to temperature. And it should just jump in there like that. So I'm going to add a couple more pieces just to make sure I have a good solid seam over there. We'll take a look at it. I think that's on there pretty solidly. So now you could do something with decorations on it too for your little strap that goes around it if you wanted to, I suppose. Let's I'm going to bend it. Actually, I'm going to bend it further backwards a little bit. think I'm going to round the back end of this just a little bit. So if you do use it for an adjustable one, or an interchangeable one I should say, have a nice rounded edge here for your ring to snap over. The other option, of course, would be to go ahead and solder this closed as a loop and then solder another one around it that's attached to the top of your pendant. That would work as well. Just depends on what you want to do. But I think for this one, I'm going to bend it back like that. And we'll put it like that, and then you can just, like I said, pop one over it, and then we'll look at it from the front here. Might need to do a little geometry skewing, but I think that'll be kind of a nice looking veil. So let's pickle that, and we'll start working on the second one. For the second one, I have this great big tube I made out of 26 gauge sterling sheet. So I'm going to end up cutting this off much shorter, but I have some 14 gauge square wire here. We're going to use this, and I think I'm going to try and do a loop, or two loops around this that end up with a smaller loop at the bottom to hook some additional rings through. So let's try that and see how that goes. Square wire has a tendency to twist on you when you try and bend it sharply, so keep that in mind when we're doing this. I have this bill making pliers too. That's pretty close to this one here. Let's try it around that and see how it looks. That's kind of what I was thinking. Then I'm going to let's leave about that much off so I can put a loop on the bottom. Let's cut this off about the same length. Let me see if I can get these angled exactly the same. So I think kind of like that. I'm going to make sure that they're parallel. So yeah, I think I'm going to pick solder there, and maybe down there so that closes those up. And we'll get enough on there to where it should run all the way around. So I'm going to cut a little more solder, and then we'll shape those bottom loops. I'm not really measuring the lengths of these or anything, so you can be less cavalier about that if you want to be more precise. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here tonight. The reason I'm soldering from the outside of the loops here is so that it's in an area that's a little bit easier to clean up. Okay, let's stop and take a look at this and see how we're at, or where we're at, I should say. So that's what they're going to look like from the front, except I'm going to cut this off, same length that it sticks out here after I smooth that out. Sometimes it's nice to make big bales like this because it gives you more chain options. You could put it on a piece of leather or whatever, or a pretty thick chain. Alright, so I'm going to cut this one off same length with the saw, and then we'll get going on this next one. One thing I almost forgot to do is I was going to solder these loops closed, pickle it, and then I'll clean it up before I polish it a little bit with the rotary tool to remove any tool marks that I might have left, because I did a little bit of manhandling to get that tight up against there. What happened there was I got this spot too hot with the flame, and so it jumped over there. So I need to make sure both of them reach temperature at about the same time, this side and this side, so that it sticks. Alright, so we'll let that one pickle and we'll work on the next one. I've made these. These are 22 gauge sheet, roughly the equivalent to each other. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to manually bend these so they're kind of domed. You can do it, you could hammer them around a ring mandrel or whatever to get a curve, a consistent curve if you want to. You could even, if you wanted to, put this in a dapping block and actually curve it both ways. I think that's what I did last time I made one of these, and that was kind of cool. But for this one, I'm just going to kind of leave it like that, I think. Curves are pretty close there. Okay, let's make sure the ends are pretty flat this way to start with. And then really, if you can balance it, this and file it, more power to you, but I can't really do that, so I usually have to do it individually on each side a little bit, because we're going to file them so they'll sit flat on the ends on top of each other. Normally I would do this against a bench block or something, but I want you to kind of see what I'm doing here. I want it to be able to balance on those ends like that. Let's see if we can get this one to be that way too. Trick is now balancing one on top of the other one evenly. Kind of like that. Not sure why I'm being so careful. As soon as I spray it with flux, it's going to move everything out of position. Unless I can dribble carefully. Nope. That was pretty good. Let's dry that real quick. I still have some solder over here, so I should be able to pick a little bit in there. Flux kind of acts like glue once it kind of gets that sticky stage. and it makes it a little bit easier to spray some more on because everything's kind of stuck together. I think we got it. This is that piece of 10 gauge square that I kind of hammered flat, and I was going to see if I could stick it as a divider in here, straight down the middle. And it looks like it would almost fit as is, so what if we turn it in there like this and then turn it sideways so it's snug. But I need to get it further through there, so let's push it all the way in. That's pretty straight. So let's just pick a little bit of solder under there and on the other side, and then we'll see how it looks. A little bit more in there. Yeah, man. I think what I'll do then is I'll just kind of even these sides out nicely so they're all symmetrical. So again, a chain will go through the top part here. A loop or something will go through the bottom part to connect to your pendant. And you probably, since they come to kind of a sharp point, you might want to file them a little flat so nobody stabs themselves in the chest with them. You don't want to accidentally injure your customers. Okay, so I'm going to throw that one in the pickle and we'll work on number 4, which is a variation of this one. Aha, I did some little sort of filigree-ish things here. So we'll see if we can do the same thing with this. I think I'm going to do this one without a divider though. So we'll just get these to balance like that. I'm up in the air on whether I should lay these side by side with a magnesia block, which I'm thinking maybe because I've got some pre-soldered in areas here. So what if we did that? That looks reasonably good. So let me cut a little bit more solder. So when you're doing the ring that attaches to your pendant on this one, you want to make sure the ring isn't so big that this whole thing can flop around over it. Otherwise it'll keep getting turned upside down and stuff. So since I didn't put a divider in there, just make it a smaller ring so it can't actually go through it. It can only move this way a little bit. So ready for number 5. That's number 4. Number 5 involves this little open back bezel I made for this amethyst, and some pieces of 22 gauge silver sheet, which I cut kind of with a central square there, and then tapered down to the ends on either side. And I cut a little groove with my file in order to make it so that I would be able to bend it relatively sharply in those spots. So I can just do this. Same thing on this side. And what we're going to do for this one is we're going to solder these both opposite of each other. I think what I'll probably do though is I'm going to solder, put a little tiny bit of solder here, here, and here, 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 and here. And then I'm going to use a pretty big piece down here. We'll file it a little bit so it matches the curve of this, and then we'll just butt it up against there, and we should be able to solder them to either side. So let's do that. If you want to see how to make one of these open back step bezels for a faceted stone, I have a good video for that. I'll put a link up there for you if you want to check that out. It's one of my older videos. So the editing may be a little rough, but the content should be good. Editing videos was a sort of a learning curve. I had done it back when I was a school teacher years ago, but only a little tiny bit, and I was long out of practice. And software changes over time too, so I'm just going to curve this with my Dremel just slightly. I'll be right back. The trick will be getting these truly opposite of each other. Sometimes my eyes fail me when I'm doing it a little bit and they get slightly crooked, but we'll do our best. Cool that off and get it so I can look at it a little closer to make sure I have things straight. I think that's going to be fine. Okay, so I'm going to pickle that. Feels like they're both on there really securely. While those are pickling, I might go make my wife some dinner, and then I'll come back and I'll polish them up and show you the end. So I have everything polished up. I'll show you the different ones. There's this one. And like I said, this one you could use as a bail that you can snap off of different pendants if you wanted to have some choices of pendants. Or you could just solder it closed and use it as a regular kind of tube bail. Here's the second one with double loop hanging from it. A bold sort of bail. Third, we have this kind of sleek, modern-looking one. If you look at it from the side, it's got the two separated cavities, so it keeps the chain and the ring on the top of the pendant separate. And then we have Filigree. Same basic idea. I didn't put a barrier in this one because I didn't want it to show through. And then finally, we have a little kind of stone at the center of a sort of a bow tie. So you hang your pendant from down here and your chain up here. So I think I kind of like that one. I'll probably use that in something in the future. So, all right, I will take some better pictures of those. Ooh, I have bad polishing here. So I'll take better pictures and put them at the end. All right, well, that was the bales video number 3. I hope you found those to be useful and enjoyable to watch. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And check out some of my other videos. I have over 300, and I think there's something for almost everybody who's a metalsmith, whether they're a beginner or someone more advanced. There's also a playlist page where things are put into a way easier way to navigate the channel. There's a whole bunch of different kind of lists on my playlist page too. If you're looking for just ring projects, there's a ring video list. If you're looking for something from a particular art period that has that kind of aspect to it, there's like an Art Deco list. So check those things out. Watch a few videos. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. In addition, don't forget to check out the video description down below. There's some important links. There's one about safety, which is of primary importance. You should always be careful when you're doing stuff like this. And there's also some links to ways to support the channel. One is my website if you want to get something pretty that I've made. That's there. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get one of those nice design idea books or a funny mug or something like that. There's a link to the Buy Me a Coffee, which helps with supplies if you want to make a small contribution to my supply pile. And there's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that and maybe become involved there. I'd love to have you over there as well. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.